Have you ever discovered something in your family's past that changed how you see yourself? The glare of stage lights pierced through the haze of the packed conference room, casting stark white beams across Emma Hart's face. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the round glasses perched on her nose, the lenses fogged faintly from her nervous breath. The hum of the livestream's viewer count ticked upward, unrelenting and impersonal, spilling digits faster than she could follow. Cameras trained on her, and millions of unseen eyes hovered online, ready to judge. She steadied herself, scanning the judges' panel before her. Their expressions were a gallery of skepticism, some fixed and dismissive, others whispered behind polished smiles. Her auburn hair caught the light, a vivid flame against her muted, second-hand cardigan, but it did little to ward off the chill setting deep in her stomach. Emma's voice cracked as she began her pitch, a story she poured years into, a tapestry woven from fragmented family secrets and haunted pasts. She spoke of forgotten letters, of the whispers locked within an antique mirror, of lives shadowed but yearning to be understood. Her words were tentative, fragilely a fragile bridge she built to the world. Then came the snap, the judge's derisive laugh slicing through her narrative. "Naive," he muttered, voice dripping with condescension. "Old-fashioned and uninspired. This isn't what the market wants." A ripple of dismissive murmurs trickled through the room. Online comments flooded in. Sharp tongues and biting critiques rendered her invisible, her dreams trivial. "Outdated. Try something original. Waste of time." Emma's cheeks flushed hot, a burning shame spreading to her neck. The air grew dense, suffocating, punctuated by the cold digital glow of rejection. Her carefully chosen words now felt like echoes in a hollow chamber. The screen displayed her social handles. Follower counts stalled, the engagement no heartfelt connection but a flurry of empty negativity. A harsh spotlight of exposure that felt blinding and isolating. A fellow contestant leaned over, whispered with pity, "Maybe stick to the mundane, Emma." Her lips parted to protest, to plead for understanding, but no sound came. The room spun slightly, her footing seemed less certain. Outside the window, a chill wind rattled nearby trees, whispering through the urban canyon like a mournful sigh. The city beyond shimmered with neon indifference, a blur of motion and muted noise meaningless to the ache swelling inside her. Emma's head bowed. Her reflection in the mirrored panel behind the judges fractured and distorted, a fragmented self caught between desire and defeat. The weight of invisibility pressed hard. A twitch on her phone drew her Gazia notification bright and blinking. "Your latest post has gone viral." Pause. Then, suddenly, #NaiveWriter trended, the tag burning like a brand. Tears pricked, unbidden, on the cusp of her lashes. The dream she carried inside now felt distant, mocked by a world too noisy to listen and too jaded to care. Her breath hitched. The camera's red light pulsed steadily. The crowd's eyes diffused into a sea of faceless critics. The mirror behind her shimmered faintly, catching the gold and brown tones of fading memories, reflecting a history she hadn't yet dared confront. In that fracturing moment, somewhere between humiliation and heartache, Emma's gaze lifted through the haze of public scorn, a steady flame flickered. The mirror's surface seemed to promise more than just reflection. A portal, a thread. Her fingers clenched into fists. The inner fire beneath the ash refused to die. And as the scene held a breathless pause suspended in time, Emma's story began not in triumph, but in the raw, aching vulnerability of being unseen. The journey was just beginning. The harsh glow of the apartment's single lamp cast long shadows around the small room where Emma sat curled on the couch. Outside, rain tapped relentlessly against the window, the city's distant rumble muted beneath a thick veil of gray clouds. Her eyes, behind the thin rims of her glasses, flicked with a restless energy, reflecting the pale light and a maelstrom of doubt within. The biting sting of public rejection lingered, sharp and unforgiving. Emma replayed the pitch over and over in her mind, the pointed critiques, the deliberate dismissals, the cruel laughter of the judges and the venom in the scrolling online comments. Each word felt like a weight pressing deeper into her chest, starving the faint embers of hope she'd worn as armor. She buried her face in her hands, clutching at the threads of a dream that now seemed both distant and fragile. The silence engulfed her, thick and suffocating, pierced only by the digital chirp of notifications on her phone pings that served as reminders that the world was watching, judging, and ready to move on without her. A soft knock at the door broke the oppressive quiet. She didn't respond immediately, fingers tightening around her sweater. Moments later, the knock came again, more insistent, but gentle. Nina, her oldest and truest friend, stepped inside, her expression a quiet mix of concern and empathy. The room seemed to breathe a fraction easier in her presence. "Emma," Nina said softly, sitting beside her without waiting for an invitation. "That was brutal." Emma exhaled slowly, the edge of anger sharp beneath her voice. "Yeah." Like shouting in a void. Nina reached out, squeezing her hand gently. "But you showed up. You dared to put yourself out there when most wouldn't. That counts for something." Emma met her friend's gaze, vulnerability flickering behind the defiance. The warmth of understanding was a balm to the sting of rejection. Yet beneath the comfort lay the churning sea of self-doubt, the gnawing fear that maybe she was chasing shadows, old ghosts that refused to let her be. "They see the surface. They don't want the depths," Emma murmured, voice thin, eyes distant. "They don't want the old stories, the dust, the cracks. They want clean, new tales polished and packaged." Nina's brows furrowed. "Maybe the world isn't ready for your story yet. But that doesn't mean it isn't real or important." That simple truth stirred something fragile deep within Emma, spark too small to ignite a flame, but enough to fend off the cold embrace of despair. She swallowed the lump in her throat, fingers absently tracing the faded fabric of her vintage cardigan. The rain pattered persistently outside, a steady rhythm that mirrored the slow beating of her heart beginning to reclaim its strength. The screen of her laptop flickered to life, casting a pale glow that seemed to illuminate not just the room but the spaces within her still shadowed by doubt. Emma's gaze settled on the cracked face of the small locket around her neck, the same one passed down through generations, a silent witness to love, loss, and memory. It was a tangible link to a past that held secrets, yes, but also stories waiting to be told. She touched the locket gently, feeling its cool weight against her skin, a reminder that beneath the weight of rejection lay the potential for discovery, the chance to reclaim not just her story but her very sense of self. As the evening deepened, the city lights blurred through the rain-streaked window, casting a tapestry of golds and blues across the walls. Emma exhaled, tentative but resolute, a quiet promise forming in the stillness. The mirror on the wall reflected her silhouette, tall, slender, austere yet burning with an ember of will. Behind the glass lay hidden truths waiting to be uncovered, and slowly, intentionally, Emma began to rise from the ashes of dismissal. Her journey was far from over. The morning sun filtered through the narrow alleyway where the garage sale unfolded in muted shadows, the scent of damp earth mixing with the faint aroma of old paper and forgotten wood. Emma's footsteps were soft against the cracked pavement, her breath steady despite the storm that still raged quietly inside her. She wandered slowly among the discarded relics of lives once lived, the air thick with stories whispered but unheard. Her gaze caught on a tall, ornate mirror propped against a faded stepladder, its frame carved with swirling patterns dusted with years of neglect. It beckoned to her with a familiarity she couldn't place, a quiet promise beneath the layers of grime. Emma hesitated, then reached out to brush the surface with a sleeve, watching as the dirt and fingerprints smudged beneath her touch. With a sudden resolve, she lifted the mirror carefully onto a table, the wood creaking under its weight. The surrounding noises dimmed, the world narrowing to the space between her trembling hands and the reflective glass. As she traced the carvings, a glint caught her eye, a folded, faded letter tucked delicately inside the frame, almost hidden, almost lost. Her heart thudded as she pulled the letter free, the paper brittle and yellowed, edges curling with age. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, ink faded, like a memory pressed through time itself. She unfolded it slowly, the words trembling with a weight that reached deep, threading through generations. The room around her seemed to breathe, the amber light casting soft sepia hues that blurred the edges between past and present. A distant echo of voices, laughter, and the faintest strains of a forgotten song floated through the Ira phantom chorus woven from the threads of history. Emma's eyes flickered to her reflection in the mirror. There she was, caught between now and then, her vibrant auburn hair aflame against the soft gold tones. The mirror held more than her image. It promised hidden truths craving revelation. She pressed the letter to her chest, a pulse of determination igniting within her. The rejection, the humiliation, the lonely battle against disbelief, they all converged into a sharp clarity. This was no longer just a story she wanted to tell, but a legacy she had been summoned to reclaim. The fragile past whispered urgently, the weight of handwritten lines bridging time and sorrow. Emma's fingers clenched the paper, the warmth of long-gone hands almost palpable. It was a call she couldn't ignore, a narrative that promised redemption and discovery. Outside, a breeze stirred the leaves, a soft rustling like a breath against the windowpane. The mirror caught the light, sending flickers dancing across Emma's face, shadows merging with light in a delicate ballet. In that shimmering moment, hope kindled a fragile but fiercely burning flame. Emma's lips curled into a tentative smile, the fire within her stoked anew, ready to confront the shadows, chase forgotten stories, and carry forward the voices echoing through the ages. And just like that, the mirror reflected not only her image but the beginning of a journey that would redefine Heron, the past she was determined to untangle. The late afternoon sunlight sliced through the leafy canopy, dappling the cracked pavement of the suburban neighborhood where Emma stood, her fingers clutched tightly around the aged letter she'd found tucked inside the frame of the antique mirror. The air buzzed with the soft hum of cicadas, the scent of distant rain lingering in the warming breeze, washing the edges of the day in golden light and quiet anticipation. Her breath came steady but quickened with a mixture of awe and apprehension as she traced the faded inked lines of the letter. The cursive script was shaky yet precise, composed decades ago by a hand both trembling with urgency and steady with conviction. The words whispered secrets from a past layered beneath her own, promises and fears embedded in fragile parchment. Emma's round glasses reflected the glow of twilight, distorting the words for a fleeting moment, like the layers of history twisting through her mind. Her thoughts galloped. What if this letter really held the key to the stories she longed to tell? What if the legacy of her ancestors bore a truth different from the one she had inherited? The gentle crunch of gravel behind her startled Emma. She spun, heart pounding, to see an elderly woman approaching with slow, steady steps. The woman's eyes, soft but piercing, held the weight of countless memories, their depths inviting trust. "Susanna?" Emma inquired, voice barely above the whispering wind. The old woman nodded, extending a trembling hand. "I heard you found the letter. It's been waiting all these years, hasn't it?" Emma swallowed hard and offered a tentative smile. "I didn't know where to start, but I think this is the beginning." Susanna motioned for her to follow, leading Emma toward a weathered bench beneath a sprawling oak. As they settled, the woman's tales flowed, painting vivid glimpses of the neighborhood's past, the joys, sufferings, and unspoken truths that time had buried. With each story, Emma felt the weight of her family's history settle into place, the intangible becoming tangible. Her hands ached with eagerness, flipping open her notebook to capture the fragile yet vital threads Susanna wove from memory. "Your grandfather," Susanna said softly, "he carried burdens few understood. But he was brave more than you realize." Emma's gaze dropped, fingers nervously toying with the letter. "How do you carry something like that?" "Without breaking. By remembering," Susanna replied, "and by passing the memory on." The sun dipped lower, stretching shards of amber through the foliage as shadows deepened around them. Emma's chest tightened, the enormity of what she'd uncovered pressing against her, both thrilling and terrifying. A distant rumble warned of an approaching storm, the first heavy drops tapping the leaves overhead, filling the space with nature's urgent rhythm. Emma folded the letter carefully, her resolve hardening. I have to keep going. For them, for their stories. Her voice faltered briefly, then steadied. But what if it changes everything? What if I'm not ready? Susanna smiled, a gentle, knowing curve of her lips. The past always changes us. The question is, who do we choose to be afterward? As raindrops began to patter a steady rhythm, Emma rose, feeling the first sharp thrill of purpose mixed with the shadow of doubt. The letter's mystery was no longer just words on paper, it was a doorway to the legacy she was meant to claim, fraught with pain and illumination alike. Her eyes drifted to the antique mirror propped against the porch railing, its glass gleaming faintly despite the gathering gloom. The reflection it held was no longer just her own but something more, a bridge between eras, a call she could no longer ignore. The storm approached, darkening the sky and swirling shades of gray and blue. Emma's fingers tightened on the letter once more, a fragile flame flickering in the encroaching twilight. Ahead lay truths tangled in time, waiting for her to unravel. With hesitant steps, she moved toward the house, a whispered promise lingering between breaths that discovery was both a beginning and an awakening. And somewhere beyond the clouds, the first thunder grumbled low and relentless. The late afternoon sun slipped behind gathering clouds, casting the suburban street into a somber twilight. Emma clutched the worn letter tightly in one hand, her other hand absently wiping the dust off an old, sepia-toned photograph she'd pulled from the stack Susanna had handed her earlier. The elderly woman's words had filled her with fleeting hope, yet the weight of uncertainty pressed against Emma's chest, relentless and growing. Her footsteps slowed as she approached the small local library, a place both familiar and strange, steeped in the scent of aging paper and forgotten knowledge. Emma's breath created small clouds in the chilly air as she paused at the threshold, hesitating for a moment before entering. Inside, the quiet murmur of pages turning and whispers floated like a distant echo. Emma made her way toward the archives, the narrow aisles lined with brittle records and aged photographs. Her fingers danced over file folders, a careful search for connections, fragments of her grandfather's life and the mysterious history hinted at in the mirror's letter. Hours slipped by as she dove deeper into faded newspaper clippings, musty journals, and town records. Each discovery flickered with promise yet seemed to deepen the shadows surrounding her family's past. Conflicting accounts surfaced, whispers of scandal, of silenced voices, of histories rewritten under pressure. Doubt gnawed at her resolve. A sharp chill ran through her as she felt the prickle of being watched, the weight of unseen eyes pressing into her back. She spun, scanning the empty aisles, finding only the solemn gaze of forgotten portraits. Later, back at her apartment, Emma's phone buzzed an incoming message. It was from Max, her longtime friend and occasional editor, his tone clipped yet familiar. Emma, I've looked through the new material. Mixing family mystery with fiction isn't going to help your standing. Maybe scale back. The brief message stung like a cold slap. Emma's thumb hovered, her fingers trembling over the keyboard before she typed a quick reply. This story means more than just standing, Max. It's truth. I have to see it through. A brief silence followed before Max's hesitant response, be careful. Some truths aren't welcome. Days followed where the pressure-mounted social media critiques masked as advice, shadowed conversations with those who once seemed allies. The lines between friend and stranger blurred. Emma felt the walls closing in, but with each setback, a flicker of stubborn resolve ignited within. One evening, returning from a visit to Susanna, Emma noticed a figure lingering near the old neighborhood store, a silhouette caught beneath flickering street lamps. The shadow melted into the night before she could approach, a reminder that the past wasn't only hidden in dusty letters but watched from the dark. That night, sleep was elusive. Memories and fears tangled in her dreams, the mirrored reflection of a woman lost between past and present, the weight of forgotten letters pressing against her soul. In the dim glow of dawn, Emma sat by the window, the watch nestled against her palm. Its faint ticking resonated, steady yet haunting. The urgency of the unknown pulled her forward even as tangled questions clouded her mind. The fascinating mystery had become a haunting obsession, a thread poised to unravel her comfortable world ever more tightly. She exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the soft, blue light trembling beneath the watch face, a symbol of secrets waiting to be revealed, and of a journey only just beginning. And as the sun edged higher, breaking through the morning mist, Emma knew she could no longer turn away from the past that beckoned with whispered truths and shadowed promises. The attic was suffused with amber light filtering through a grimy, circular window, casting elongated shadows over dust-covered trunks and forgotten heirlooms. Emma ascended the narrow steps, each creak beneath her weight echoing like a whispered secret. Her fingers grazed the worn wood of a battered chest, long sealed beneath layers of neglect. As she kneeled before it, the air thick with the scent of aged paper and faded memories, her heart pounded with an uneasy mixture of anticipation and dread. The heavy lid creaked open, releasing a fragile cloud of dust and silence. Inside lay bundles of yellowed letters, ties loosened as though waiting for her hands to untangle their threads. Emma's breath caught as she unfolded the first letter, the handwriting elegant yet hurried, the words pulsing with urgency from a time both distant and intimate. These letters were unsent secret outpourings never meant for the eyes of others, bound by love and fear and the weight of unspoken truths. The room seemed to tilt as she read, the sepia-toned past colliding violently with her stark, modern world. The letters revealed a tapestry of betrayal and sacrifice woven into her family's history, stories erased from public memory but preserved in these fragile tendrils of ink and paper. A photograph slipped from the bundle, fluttering to the dusty floor. Emma's hands trembled as she retrieved Ida's striking, sepia-toned image of a woman whose eyes bore a haunting familiarity. It was her grandmother, younger and vulnerable, standing in front of the same mirror she had found at the garage sale, the glass tarnished but alive with reflection. A low, unbidden sob escaped her lips as the magnitude of her discovery sank into her bones. The mirror was not just a relic but a sentinel, witness to long-buried stories and a keeper of truths her family had tried to conceal. Suddenly, a sound behind her made her freeze, soft footsteps descending the attic stairs. Her mother's voice, distant yet unmistakable, drifted through the doorway. "Emma, why are you poking through things that should stay buried?" Turning slowly, Emma met her mother's guarded, weary eyes. "Because I need to know who we really are," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging within. Her mother shook her head, the shadow of painful memories crossing her face. "The past is nothing but a chain, Emma. Letting go is the only way forward." Emma's gaze hardened, a fierce clarity igniting within. "No. The past is what makes us. It's time we faced it, not run from it." The attic seemed to exhale, its heavy silence engulfing the space between them. A ceiling crack caught a beam of late afternoon light, illuminating the mirror's frame, its golden carvings shimmering like whispers of forgotten dreams. Emma stepped forward, her reflection merging with the ghostly imprints of her ancestors, as the weight of the discovery reshaped her understanding of self and heritage. The letters, the mirror, and the locket all intertwined, a triad of stories converging to rewrite the narrative of her lineage. The decision lay before her: to bury the past once more, or to let it rise and shape the future. In that charged silence, Emma's fingers curled tightly around the photograph and letters, the fire within blazing fiercely enough to shatter doubt. Her voice, barely a whisper but resolute, echoed into the fading light, "I won't be invisible anymore." The attic's shadows stretched and shifted, as if acknowledging her vow, the mirror gleaming brighter, a promise that the story was far from over, and the truth was about to emerge, unstoppable. Outside, twilight embraced the neighborhood, lights flickering alive like scattered stars. Inside, Emma stood poised on the threshold of revelation, the past and present colliding in a moment that would define everything yet to come. Rain fell in cold, relentless sheets outside the small house where Emma confronted the bitterest storm yet that churned fiercely within her own heart. The faded walls of the attic, heavy with the dust of forgotten memories, seemed to close in around her, their shadows lengthening like the fractures spreading through her life. She sat on the worn wooden floor, the box of unsent letters spilled open beside her, the yellowed pages fluttering in the draft from the cracked window. The fragile script etched stories she never expected to read, whispers of secrets her family hid, betrayals cloaked in silence, the weight of guilt passed from one generation to the next. Her fingers trembled as she traced the words, each one a shard piercing through her carefully constructed world. The revelation that her own blood was entwined in the events described in the letter shattered the foundation of her identity. The safe harbor she had sought in her heritage dissolved like mist. The rain intensified, hammering the rooftop in a cacophony that mirrored the tempest raging inside her chest. Emma's breath hitched, a ragged sound swallowed quickly by the oppressive quiet. The phone in the next room buzzed softly, unnoticed. She pulled the seashell bracelet from her wrist, the smooth, worn shells cold beneath her skin, an emblem of ties she now questioned. The mirror across the room reflected not just her image but the fractured lines of doubt and despair etched into her face. Memories flooded a montage of whispered conversations, the hesitant kindness of Susanna, the harsh words from her editor dismissing her work, the mocking laughter from the live stream. The walls seemed to echo with shadows of all she had lost, not just the photograph, but trust, love, and a sense of direction. Words came weakly, a fragment of shattered hope, barely audible. What am I even fighting for? The silence that followed was suffocating, stretching into an abyss where even the heartbeat of the old watch seemed to falter. She curled into herself, the weight of everything threatening to crush the fragile threads of her resilience. Outside, lightning fractured the sky, momentarily illuminating the attic with stark white light, revealing the delicate lines of her tear-streaked face. With each flash, Emma felt her world unravel, more identity slipping through her grasp, certainty dissolving into fear. And in that profound darkness, before the first tentative stirrings of dawn, Emma stood alone, fractured, lost, and poised on the edge of breaking completely. The night pressed its cold, relentless weight against the small apartment's windows, rain tapping incessantly like a mournful heartbeat against the glass. Inside, Emma sat curled in a faded armchair, the soft fabric a meager shield against the chill that had seeped into her bones. The dim light of a lone lamp cast long, wavering shadows across the room, turning every object into a phantom of itself. Her gaze was vacant, fixed on the old mirror leaning precariously against the cracked plaster wall. Once a source of hidden truths, it now reflected a woman unraveling, her vibrant auburn hair dulled in the faint glow, eyes rimmed with shadows of exhaustion and grief. The round glasses she wore slipped slightly, fogging over with unspent tears and disbelief. Her hands rested limply on her lap, fingers tracing the worn seashell bracelet she had unconsciously clung to during her darkest moments, a fragile token of family and connection now feeling impossibly distant. The room seemed impossibly large, oppressive yet hollow, a cavernous space echoing with the silence of lost voices and fading hope. Outside, thunder rumbled softly in the distance, a somber soundtrack to the collapse of certainty within her. Memories of confrontation flashed behind her closed eyes, the harsh dismissal from her mother, the cold skepticism of her editor, the fragmented and conflicting stories unearthed from the dusty attic. She felt the ground crumble beneath her feet, the roots of her identity loosening, leaving her adrift in a sea of shadows and doubt. The phone vibrated faintly on the side table, its glow a distant reminder of the world beyond her isolation, a world that critiqued, dismissed, moved on without her. She reached out half-heartedly, thumb hesitating over the screen before withdrawing, unwilling to face the avalanche of notifications and unseen judgments. A low sigh escaped her lips, the weight of impossibility folding around her like a suffocating shroud. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper swallowed by the stillness. "Who am I now?" The old mirror caught the flicker of lamplight, its surface rippling as if alive, casting fractured reflections. Emma's eyes fixed on the distorted images, the broken shards mirroring the fracturing of her own soul. The bracelet slipped from her wrist, clattering softly onto the floor, a hollow sound, resonant and final. She let the tears fall freely now, tracing silent tracks down her cheeks. Outside, the rain softened, becoming a gentle drizzle, but inside, the stillness deepened. Emma sat motionless, a figure swallowed by shadows, a soul poised on the edge of surrender. The mirror shimmered faintly in the dim light, a silent witness to the depths of her despair. And in that heavy silence, the weight of all she had lost seemed to press down a quiet, unyielding descent into darkness. The world outside continued, indifferent and distant, while Emma lay cocooned in the fragile, aching void of herself. The night embraced the attic in a shawl of silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of Emma's breath and the faint ticking of the watch resting gently on the old wooden table before her. The weight of despair that had threatened to consume her moments before still lingered, yet within that darkness stirred a fragile, shimmering thread of light. Her trembling hand reached cautiously, almost reverently, toward the delicate seashell bracelet she wore, weathered and faintly sparkling under the pale glow of a single bedside lamp. Each shell flickered like a whisper of courage, each tiny ridge a memory unforgotten, an unbroken lineage passed through generations. The past, long buried beneath layers of silence and shadow, called softly to her now, not as an accusation, but as a quiet guide. Emma's gaze lifted reluctantly to the cracked mirror propped against the attic wall. The glass, dulled with age, reflected not just her warped image but something deeper, a montage of lived lives and unseen sacrifices defined in sepia tones that shimmered faintly like dreams against the storm outside. The reflection wavered, as if breathing in time with her labored heartbeat. A shiver crawled along her spine as a distant roll of thunder grumbled beneath the churning clouds. But unlike before, the sound no longer signified fear. It was the storm's first murmured promise of clarity after the long night of turmoil. She leaned closer, tracing the letters' faded ink beneath the mirror's frame, feeling the permanence of the handwritten words etched with a weight that outlasted time itself. In the tenuous quiet, Emma whispered a fragile vow, almost lost in the rain's steady drumming. Not yet lost. Her fingers closed gently around the letter, holding it as if it were a lifeline. Memories of Susanna's slow, wise smile flashed through her mind, the encouragement planted like a seed within her restless spirit. She remembered the locket's warm presence against her palm, the connecting thread between past and present, loss and hope. Beyond the attic window, the storm softened, light mingling with shadow as the first hesitant rays of dawn spilled across the horizon. The sky breathed slowly in hues of faded gold and soft lavender, the colors of gentle resurrection. Emma let her breath steady, grounding herself on the cusp of dawning possibility. The path ahead was far from clear, fraught with uncertainty and shadows yet to be uncovered. But in that fragile hour, she saw the truth piercing through the darkness. Redemption was not found by fleeing but by embracing the woven tapestry of her heritage. Her gaze settled once more on the mirror, her own reflection fractured but awakening. A faint smile touched her lips, hesitant but brimming with quiet strength. The journey was no longer just an escape but a reclamation, a dance between the light and shadow within her family's story and her own soul. And as the screen faded softly to the muted dawn, Emma stood poised between past and future, the stories of those who came before her alive in her eyes, ready to be carried forward. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the attic window, casting gentle rays onto the dust-laden surfaces and illuminating the mirror that had once seemed to reflect only shadows. Emma stood motionless before it, a faint shimmer of resolve flickering deep within her eyes. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and old wood, but amidst the nostalgia, something new stirred, a whisper of hope reborn from the ashes of despair. She reached out slowly, hesitating at first, then touching the cold glass. Her fingertips traced the intricate carvings framing the mirror patterns she'd seen in her grandmother's jewelry and in her dreams. The mirror's surface, though clouded with time, shimmered softly under her touch, a promise of revelations yet to come. Inside, the room was bathed in early morning light, the flickering glow accentuating the gentle dust motes dancing in the quiet air. The muted palette of browns and golds, woven through relics and memories, seemed to hold their breath in anticipation, waiting for her decision. Emma's eyes flickered with a quiet strength and acknowledgement that she was no longer the hesitant girl haunted by past ghosts, but a woman ready to face what lay hidden. With measured breath, she stepped closer, her reflection merging with the faint echoes of her ancestors woven into the very fabric of the mirror's age-old glass. It was no longer just her image. It was a portal linked to time, to secrets long buried deep within the family's history. Her fingers brushed the frame, feeling the faint roughness of carved wood, a tactile reminder of stories passed down through generations. A soft breeze stirred the attic's curtains, whispering through the cracked panes, carrying with it the promise of renewal. The mantle of darkness had begun to lift. Here, in this fragile moment, she sensed the first glimmers of a new beginning and awakening born from the depths of loss, forged in the tension of memory and hope. A small, almost imperceptible smile curled across her lips, a symbol of her unwavering resolve. Her gaze lingered on the mirror, and for the first time in a long while, she saw their reflection, her past and her future intertwined in silent harmony. The shadows receded, and the room grew alive with a gentle warmth, promising that though the journey had only just begun, she was no longer alone in facing it. The camera pulled back slowly, framing Emma standing at the threshold of transformation, poised between darkness and light, torn between history and destiny, but ready to step forward. The mirror's surface shimmered once more, a fleeting glimpse of the stories she carried, waiting patiently to be told. The dawn glow settled gracefully over the attic, a silent witness to her awakening, as her figure softened into a symbol of quiet resilience and hope. Soft morning light spilled lazily through the attic window, painting streaks of gold across the dust motes dancing in the air. Emma, standing before the mirror once more, saw herself not just as the woman haunted by doubts but as someone quietly resurrected, her face calm, eyes shining with renewed purpose. The artifact in her hand, the antique mirror, reflected back more than her image. It shimmered with the echoes of distant lives, stories woven into its glass, waiting to be uncovered. She reached out slowly, fingertips brushing the ornate frame that had once seemed only a vessel of hidden truths. Now, it felt like a gateway, an invitation to pierce through the veils of silence and denial that had long shrouded her lineage. The mirror's surface rippled, then stilled, as if acknowledging her resolve. A deep breath filled her lungs, steady and full of an unspoken vow. The storm of despair had subsided, replaced by a flicker of strength, a fragile ember of hope that refused to be extinguished. Emma's gaze lingered, catching the reflection of her ancestral past haunted faces, silent witnesses, and her own, transformed. Outside, the attic's window no longer painted shadows. Instead, the rising sun cast a warm glow, chasing away the remnants of night. The attic was no longer a tomb of secrets but a sanctuary of truth, an altar of courage. She turned, her movements unhurried, each step a deliberate act of redefinition. The cluttered artifacts and photographs she once saw as relics of the past now shimmered with a new significance, proof that her story was intertwined with theirs, a continuum of resilience and love. On the small wooden table beside her, the old letter trembled softly as she gently cradled it. Its faded ink bore witness to silent confessions, truths buried but not erased. Emma pressed it close to her chest, feeling the unbreakable bond connecting her to the lives who'd come before. The air hummed with quiet energy, a gentle reminder that the moment of awakening was just the beginning. Dawn's light grew brighter, illuminating the room's every corner, the artifact, the mirror, the family relics, all infused with a new purpose. Emma's eyes glistened with unspoken understanding, a silent acknowledgement that the journey yet carried risks, but she was no longer shackled by fear. Her heart beat steady and confident, embracing the unknown with grace. A single tear traced her cheek, shimmering like a tear of pure resolve. She released it slowly, letting it fall onto the old letter's baptism of renewal. Stepping away from the mirror, she approached the attic door, her silhouette framed by the radiant dawn. Every faint creak and gentle gust of wind underscored the significance of this turning point, the first step toward reclaiming her true legacy. And as she reached for the latch, the attic filled with a luminous promise of stories yet to be told, more than her own lives woven into the fabric of time, now finally ready to be carried forward with quiet, unwavering pride. Dawn's first light cut through the attic window, spilling a gentle, golden hue across the dust motes hovering in the still air. Emma stood motionless before the mirror, her reflection shimmering with a luminous clarity that seemed to transcend the grime and shadows of her doubts. The mirror, once a silent witness to her despair, now radiated a quiet promise-on invitation to step into her true story. Her hand lingered on the polished surface, fingertips tracing the intricate carvings that had once seemed only ornamental, now symbols of her rebirth. Symbols that had connected her to generations past, their stories waiting to be reclaimed and integrated into her own narrative. The room was bathed in a soft glow, the hue of dawn blending warm browns with hints of amber, illuminating artifacts of her family's history, old photographs, yellowed letters, and a delicate locket that rested against her chest, emblematic of the enduring ties that bound her ancestors to her present. She inhaled deeply, the air fragrant with the scent of aged paper and the promise of new beginnings. Her eyes, once clouded with doubt and shame, now sparkled with a newfound resolve, as if the shadow of her struggles had dissolved, replaced by a resilient light. Slowly, she turned away from the mirror and approached the attic door. Her steps, once hesitant, now carried a steady rhythm, a deliberate stride toward honesty, forgiveness, and self-acceptance. As she reached out to open it, the glow from the attic flooded her vision, soft yet powerful, filling her with a calm assurance. Inside, artifacts bathed in the early sunlight shimmered softly, casting long, poetic shadows. The clutter and chaos of her past had become a sanctuary, a mosaic of stories and memories that she now understood were the foundation of her identity. The mirror's reflection now showed not just her face, but the collective spirit of those who had come before her. The old, engraved mirror frame seemed to hum with a gentle vibration, a silent acknowledgement of her transformation. In that moment, Emma felt entirely present, anchored in her heritage, rooted in her purpose. The despair that once threatened to consume her was now a distant echo, drowned out by the steady, unwavering pulse of her renewed conviction. Her hand clasped the handle of the attic door, and she looked back once still and serene before stepping inside. The camera lingered on her silhouette, bathed in the golden dawn light, a figure reborn, poised at the threshold of her final truth. In the attic, as the doorway closed softly behind her, the mirror captured her reflection glowing softly before fading into a plain, unassuming surface. The room settled into silence, a silent testament to the power of truth and the promise of a new chapter, waiting patiently to be written. The early morning sunlight poured softly into Emma's attic, casting gentle, shifting shadows over relics of her family's past. The air was warm, infused with a quiet glow that refused to be overshadowed by the shadows of hurt and doubt. Emma stood before the mirror, her reflection a calm, serene visage that seemed to shimmer with a new understanding. The mirror, once an echo chamber for her fears, now reflected her tranquil confidence. She reached out slowly, fingertips brushing the surface where fractured memories and long-buried truths had once stirred unrest. The carvings of the mirror's frame caught the light, swirling with golden hues, an almost sacred symbol of heritage, resilience, and the stories still waiting to be carried forward. Her eyes, once clouded with uncertainty, now sparkled with a gentle strength and spoken acknowledgement that her journey of discovery had transformed her. The heavy weight of shame, betrayal, and confusion had begun to lift, replaced by a profound peace rooted in acceptance and compassion. The attic was alive with artifacts, faded photographs, handwritten letters, the delicate pendant of the family locket telling a story of resilience and silent courage. Emma's fingers lingered on the locket, feeling its cool metal against her palm, a tangible link to her ancestors' enduring spirits. The small relic seemed to pulse softly, echoing the past's quiet resilience. She took a deep breath, her chest rising in a slow, deliberate movement. Outside, the morning air was crisp, carrying whispers of renewal through the gently swaying trees. The clouds had parted, allowing streaks of sunlight to dance across the space, bathing everything in a tender light that seemed to approve of her awakening. Emma's gaze was calm but fierce, a reflection of the woman she had become. One who embraced her history without fear, who saw herself as a vessel of the stories and sacrifices of those who came before. The mirror's surface shimmered once more, revealing not just her face but the countless lives that had shaped her destiny. In that still moment, she felt the gentle whisper of a future forged on the strength of understanding, forgiveness, and love. The room around her was filled with a quiet serenity, a silent promise that she was finally aligned with her true self. Turning slowly, she approached the attic's window, the sunlight brushing her hair like a mantle of hope. The landscape stretched before her, a tapestry of blooming life and endless possibility. Her shoulders relaxed, her soul lighter than it had been in years. As she gazed outward, a slow, hopeful smile played on her lips, an invitation to step boldly into the next chapter, carrying the stories of her past with pride and grace. The camera lingered on her silhouette against the radiant dawn, standing at the crossroads of memory and now, poised to embrace a future crafted from healing and truth. The morning dawn spilled soft, golden light across the attic window, illuminating the relics of her ancestors, faded photographs, handwritten letters, treasured artifacts, each imbued with silent stories of resilience and love. Emma stood before the mirror, her reflection shimmering with a serenity born from acceptance. The shadows of doubt and despair, so long her companions, were dissolving like mist in the dawn. Her fingertips brushed the smooth surface of the aged mirror frame, a symbol of her own journey, of truths uncovered and burdens surrendered. The mirror, once a gateway to secrets that threatened to fracture her, now reflected her calm, her strength. For the first time, her gaze was steady, filled with genuine understanding. Her eyes, bright with quiet conviction, lingered on her own face, no longer the uncertain stranger who had sought her past, but a woman transformed by its embrace. Her shoulders relaxed, aligning with the peaceful rhythm of her breath, as she allowed herself to feel the fullness of the moment, the healing, the reconciliation. She reached for a fragile photograph of herself and her grandfather, the image bright and warm amid the artifacts of the attic. The moment was tender, a silent acknowledgement of the love that had sustained her through darkness and doubt. Carefully, she placed it back in its frame, centered and aligned, a symbol of newfound clarity. Outside, the world continued in gentle motion, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant hum of life awakening. But inside, the attic was a sanctuary, illuminated by the dawn's tender glow, a space where past and present, grief and hope finally coalesced. Emma's fingers traced the lines of the mirror's intricate carvings, once more, each swirl and pattern a testament to their enduring story. The mirror's surface flickered softly, as if acknowledging her journey, its inscrutable depths now gateways of peace instead of fears. Her gaze lifted, meeting her own eyes with unwavering certainty. She saw not just herself but the lives woven into her story, those who dared to love, to sacrifice, to remember. A gentle smile curled across her lips, a soft, triumphant expression that spoke of liberation and acceptance. She was no longer bound by the shadows of the past, but carried their legacy forward, not as chains, but as wings. In the stillness, she stood at the threshold of renewal, a figure radiant in quiet resolve. Her heart beat steady in unspoken promise to cherish her story, to honor her heritage, and to embrace the future with courage. The camera pulled back slowly, framing her silhouette against the luminous attic, a testament to the power of truth and the grace of reconciliation. The scene fades to black, leaving only the serene echo of her soft, confident smile, an eternal symbol of peace, resilience, and the stories that live within us all. The attic's quiet was broken only by the faint, rhythmic hum of life outside, as dawn's gentle light seeped through the attic window and spilled across artifacts of generations past. Emma stood before the mirror one final time, her reflection shimmering softly, as if brushed with the light of understanding. The shadows that once cloaked her heart had receded, replaced by a calm, luminous peace. Her fingertips brushed the worn surface of the mirror's ornate frame, tracing patterns that seemed to pulse with a silent energy, connected to the stories she now carried, stories of resilience, love, sacrifice, and hope. The mirror, which once reflected only her superficial self, now revealed the depths of her spirit, a vessel of history and healing. The room around her was bathed in the warm hues of morning, hues that spoke of renewal, of dawn breaking through night's remnants. The relics of her ancestors, faded photographs, handwritten letters, the polished locket seemed to glow with a renewed vitality, silent witnesses to her journey from darkness into light. She took a deep breath, the air filled with the scent of aged paper and blooming life, and exhaled slowly. Her eyes, once clouded with doubt and despair, now gleamed with quiet resolve. She saw herself not as a fragmented soul lost in chaos, but as a bearer of a legacy worth embracing. With deliberate steps, Emma approached the attic's small window, pushing open the shutters to reveal a sprawling landscape of awakening nature. The sky was painted in soft oranges and pinks, serenely stretching behind the trees, symbols of the endless cycle of endings and beginnings. Her hand reached out, her fingers caressing the frame of the mirror, one last time a tangible link to the stories of those who had come before. She saw their faces, their sacrifices, and their silent courage reflected in her own calm gaze. A gentle smile curved her lips, a quiet celebration of her rebirth. The stories of her ancestors no longer felt like chains but wings, lifting her toward a future carved from truth and acceptance, illuminating the path ahead. The camera slowly pulled back, capturing her silhouette against the brightness of the rising sun, an emblem of hope, resilience, and the enduring human spirit. The mirror's surface shimmered, once marine, eternal mirror of life, history, and love, before fading into the light. In that tranquil moment, the world held its breath, waiting, as Emma embraced her legacy and walked confidently into the dawn, carrying the stories that would shape her tomorrow, silent but everlasting. Would you dare to face your future? Share below.